The alphabet series is back. After a long extended break, we're jumping back into it with the letter M, and I'm going to show you how you can use the iPad and Procreate to draw this cute moose all for the letter M. That's today's video. It's all in real time, no time lapse, no edits. You can follow along every single step of the way. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. Starting out, I'm using a 4000 pixel by 4000 pixel 300 dpi canvas. It's an RGB canvas. For my brushes today, I'm going to start out using my Brainstorm sketch brush that's part of my creator set. You can pick that up on Gumroad. The link's down in the description below. Then we'll switch over to the Smooth Inker later on. And then for my color palette, once again, I've got this pre-made. So if you want to download the exact same colors that I'm using in today's video, you can get that for free on my website if you go to bjdell.com. Underneath the YouTube reference materials page, which I'll link it down in the description below too. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to begin using black here, and then I'm going to turn on symmetry just to start out. So we're going to go up here to our actions menu, hit the wrench icon up here, then we're going to go to canvas, then we're going to turn on drawing guide. You'll see we've got the 2D grid here, and I want to edit the drawing guide and turn on symmetry. So now we've got this vertical line there going from top to bottom. Anything we draw on the left side is going to show up on the right and vice versa. All right, so now that we've got that, let's go ahead and start kind of mapping out where everything goes. First, I want to get the letter in here for a kind of a guide. So I'm going to come up here. Actually, we don't even need to make a new layer. Let's go up here to the actions menu again. We're going to go to add and add text. And then for moose, let's just type the M. I'm going to double tap that to highlight it, and we'll change this to Arial. Selecting that, it'll change our font, and then we're just going to make this super big. And now that we've got that line here, we can use that to kind of center it too. Pull back out a little bit just so we can get it nice and straight there. All right, there we go. So now I want to drop the opacity of this by coming up to the layers. We just want this as a guide. So we're going to hit N for blend mode, drop this all the way down to about 8%. We're good, ready to start drawing on layer 1. I'm going to tap this, hold down, and drag it underneath layer 1. So our sketch layer is going to sit on top of there. All right, so for the moose, we're just going to do a head here. So I'm going to do an oval. For the head there, we'll do another oval down here for the snout, kind of more of a teardrop shape. Thinner at the top, wider at the bottom here. And then for the antlers, this is basically why we're using the background here, to really help us kind of visualize these on that M. Pull these down and around. You can see how this really speeds up the process, and it makes sure whatever we're drawing on one side is symmetrical with what we want to have drawn on the other. Pull that back in there. I'm going to pull these a little wider here at the top. All right, so we've got those in there. Let's go ahead and draw couple of triangles here coming down for the ears. I think that's pretty good for our overall kind of getting where everything goes. We can do a kind of curve line here for where the eyes go. Kind of map those out. And I'll draw in some ovals for those. Ovals inside for the pupils, the curve line for the irises. Kind of map out where the inside of the ears go there. All right, and I think for the mouth, I want this to not be symmetrical, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a new layer here. And you'll see now this one says assisted, this one does not. You actually have to turn on assist for that mirror effect on each new layer. And I want this off for this one, so we're not going to turn that on. And I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here because this is where I'm going to start to kind of fine tune the sketch. We'll draw some tufts of hair coming out here at the top. Just like that, and we'll start to kind of fine-tune the shape of the head. Start to pull these down here. This is where I don't really want it to be symmetrical. I want kind of this fur coming out the sides here, so we'll just do some lines like that, but they're not matched up from side to side. We'll kind of do some V's down here for the mouth. This comes in here, and we'll bring it back up and around. And this is where you can see that I'm kind of adding in some distortions to that so it's not symmetrical from side to side, so it doesn't look too mechanical there. And that was the whole point of turning off that on the side. All right, there we go. And then I can go ahead and jump back to the symmetrical one here and just do the nostrils. Those around like that. Back to my non-symmetrical one for some eyebrows here. Draw some curved lines. All right, pulling back out, you can kind of see what we're left with. So I think that's pretty good. I'm going to come up here to the layers menu now and pinch those sketch layers together. So they're all in one now, and I'm going to turn off the M here. So we're left with just the sketch. And that's it. We're pretty much done there. So now we're ready to move on to the inking. So let's go ahead and do that next. To begin that, I'm going to make a new layer on top of layer 1. And we won't set this to the drawing assist right away. I'm going to start here on some of the areas that we did without that assist. So we do need to drop the opacity though of layer 1. So I'm going to bring that down to about 38, 35%, somewhere around there. We want it to be visible, but just not too dark to where it kind of blocks what we're doing on top of it. All right, now I'm going to switch over my brush to that smooth inker. I'm going to go ahead and tap on this, and I'm going to turn under stabilization. This brings up the brush studio by tapping on it. I'm going to turn stabilization streamline all the way up to max. This kind of helps give you a smoother line. If you're doing some of these curves like this, it'll be a little bit more forgiving as you go around. All right. With that done then, I'm going to go ahead and kind of zoom in here a little bit tighter so we can see better. And I'm just going to start to do some tapered lines here, coming up and back around. And you'll see the tapers here. To get that effect, it's basically just a light pressure at the beginning of the line, going into a harder pressure or harder press on the canvas, and then lighter at the end. So if you're doing this and you're not getting those exact lines, it does take some practice. So feel free to just kind of play around with it until you get comfortable and get the lines that you're going for. There we go. Let's get this one up here. I want these to kind of match up. I don't want them to be totally symmetrical, but I do want them to have the same kind of feel going from one to the next. I'm going to be zooming in and moving around the canvas quite a bit because that is the way that I draw. So move on to the next one. I really recommend, I've talked about this numerous times, I really recommend you zoom in and out as much as possible with your drawings, just because, number one, that's the luxury of doing digital art like this. But what I always say is, if it looks good close up, it's going to look fantastic once you pull back further away. So that's kind of the key there, is you really want it to look good close up, and then once you zoom back out, that's where it's going to really, really look good. Do some tufts of hair here to kind of connect that open part of the eyes. Do our ovals here. And this is where, too, with doing these ovals, I'm going to drag and drop color. If you wanted to, you could go ahead and make a new layer, which we will do here shortly, and do drawing assist for these, so you only have to draw them once. It's totally up to you. That way they will line up too. I'm going to grab the eraser here. Actually, let's, instead of using the eraser here for the highlights, let's just hold down in the background and select white. And we'll actually paint these in rather than erasing, so that way we don't have to go back in and color them in if we forget. All right, and back to black here. Pulling back down so we can see. This is going to be a pretty big swooping curve there, so that's one of those times that that streamline really comes in handy to make sure that you've got those nice fluid lines. Pull that one down a little bit further there, because I've got that line coming in a little bit further down. Back around. I think it's got maybe too many curves in it, so let me get a little bit closer to my original. Some of those lines around there. Now I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer here on top of the inks, and then we'll tap this one and we'll turn on drawing assist. So now when we draw here on the left, it shows up on the right. That just kind of speeds up this process and makes sure that those are lined up nice and even. Once we're done with that, then we can switch back to our non-drawing assist layer. Pull these lines around. This is another one. If you wanted to, you could use the eraser to kind of block off this end a little bit. You could do this symmetrically if you wanted to on that other layer. I personally, like with this hair like this, I like to have this non-symmetrical so it looks a little bit more organic and it doesn't look as mechanical. But it's totally up to you. If you think that you would rather have it line up from left to right, feel free to use that drawing assist. Back out so you can see what we've got. Looking good. I am going to go ahead and do the drawing assist here. Layer 4 on the ears. I will have to do some erasing here though, and because it did go over that line. Since we drew these separately, they didn't exactly match up, so we just have to pull that back out. All right, now that we've got that done, pull them back down here so you can see on that same drawing assist layer, we're going to go ahead and do the antlers here. So let's go ahead and start to pull these around. This is going to be fun because it's such a crazy amount of curves. This is where, once again, that streamline really comes in handy. And since this is on a separate layer, we can just erase those overlaps. You'll see here though, because this is different here, what we're going to have to do then is we're going to have to turn off drawing assist because it's erasing up here. So if we turn that off and erase, then we can go back in here, tap it, and turn it back on if we want to continue in. Which I think here I am going to zoom in here. I'm going to make some curve lines coming around these parts where these come in, just to add in a little bit more details. It looks kind of cool. Maybe pull in some down here on the bottom too. Just like that. I think I'm going to turn off drawing assist though now, because I don't want these to totally line up. So I'll have that one there, and then maybe pull one up here from the other way so those look a little bit different. Same thing maybe up here is kind of pulling some down here and then maybe further down here so it doesn't, once again, look mechanical there. All right, that looks good. from here then, just a little bit extra details. I'm gonna go up to my brush, tap that again to open up the brush studio, and I'm gonna turn off the streamline now. And I'm just gonna come in here and just add in some little dots around just for some texture and detail. And with these, just getting the different sizes in the dots just by pressing harder on some areas and lighter on others. I can also make the brush bigger if I want to not have to press as hard for a bigger one. You'll see if you don't, it's really good to zoom in on these because if you're far out, you'll get like not an actual perfect circle here. It's easier to get those perfect circle ones if you're zoomed in really far. Otherwise, you're gonna have some shake there that doesn't show up if you zoom in. So, all right, there we go. Let's go ahead and drop our size back down. Maybe doing some tufts of loose hair there around the eyebrows, maybe even some here coming off the ears. A couple here on the nose. For the snout. All right, pulling back out then, I'm going to turn off my sketch layer. Then I'm going to pinch these two together, and now we have our inks. So we are done there, and we are ready to move on then and start our color flats. So let's do that next. So to do the color flats, what we're going to do, layer 3, I want to go ahead and tap this, and I want to set this as reference to begin with. So what this is going to do is once we make this new layer here for our color flats, we can drag and drop the colors on a separate layer. It's non-destructive, and then we can actually use this as the guide for where they go. We don't have to color in by hand. So we're going to come underneath layer 3, hit the plus to make a new layer, and then I'm going to come up here to my color palette. Let's just do the first brown here. We'll do that for the head, and then I'm going to hit continue filling here. I didn't get it in time. If you hit that, then you can just tap and fill those in. All right, back up to my color palette. This lighter brown here, go ahead and tap here for the center. And I think actually I'm going to do black. You can choose black from here, but we'll do that for the inside of the nostrils. Fill those in so those are nice and dark. Next up, we've got the dark brown here. We're going to go ahead and use that for the eyebrows. And then if we hold down here in the background for that nose, we'll use that, or the snout, we'll use that for the inside of the ears. Coming back up to our color palette, we've got white. We need that for the insides of the eyes. So if we turn off the background, you can see it looks like the eyes are filled in, but since our background color is white, they are not. Once we turn it off, we can see, so we can just drag and drop the colors in there. And then blue for the inside, which we need to zoom in here because we want to make sure we don't hit the lines. If you hit the lines, it's going to do that. If you're zoomed further out, you might not see that and just think, oh, I missed it. And then once you get to a later stage and you zoom in, then you're going to realize, oh, wait a second, I actually hit that line, and now I've got to either undo a ton of work or just totally scrap stuff and go back from the beginning. So keep an eye out for that. And then finally, the lighter tan here, we'll use that for the antlers, which I missed that one, it looks like. Or there's a gap. So if this happens, it means that there is a gap, which you can see right here. There is a gap there. So I'm going to go back to my reference, and I'm just going to kind of fill in that part of the gap. Then we'll go back to our colors, back to that layer of the color flats, and drag and drop that in. Now, if you are having issues too, to where you're dragging and dropping the color in and it's not filling all the way to the edge of the lines, I'll kind of show you here. You see I've got this white gap here along the lines. That means your color drop threshold is not turned up high enough. So when you drag and drop, you'll see this percentage number up here at the top. as I drag this over further, you see it fills that gap in. With this one, not the greatest example because, you know, having it at like 5% fills it in. Usually you'll want it up in the 90s to make sure. You just don't want to go so far that it fills in absolutely everything. But there we go. There's our color flats. Fairly quick and simple using that technique of the reference and the extra layer. So from here then, we're ready to move on and actually start doing the shadows and the highlights. So let's go ahead and do that next. So to begin the shadows and the highlights, what we're going to do with our layers tab open, we're going to make a new layer here on top. Then we're going to tap this and we're going to set this to clipping mask. So what this does is allows us to draw on this layer, and it's only going to show up on the parts that are colored in on layer 4. So if we color out here, it's not going to show up. If we color out here, down here, over here, nothing's going to show up. It's only going to stick to those. So with that done then, we're going to come up here to our color palette, select this purplish color. That's going to be our shadows. And then we can go in and start doing our shadows. So I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to have the light source coming in from this top left-hand corner. So highlights are going to be on the left, shadows are going to be on the right. So we'll start, usually I like to start with like a fairly big curved area. So we'll hit this one here, kind of keeping with that directional light. We're going to have a shadow that comes over here. That's going to give off a shadow. And this purple is not going to be the end color. This is obviously not a brown darkened highlight here with the purple. So we're going to adjust this here very shortly. You'll see I keep moving my canvas around because I want to be able to kind of do these curves in the most comfortable position that my arm can make that movement in. If you're keeping your canvas just at one position, it's going to get uncomfortable. You're going to start to kind of have some arm wear. And also you're going to kind of fight against the lines. There's a natural way that your arm is going to want to move. There's a natural way that it's going to feel most comfortable in, and just kind of repositioning the canvas until you hit an area like that that feels natural and comfortable is really key to, number one, getting the smooth, clean lines, but then also just kind of saving some wear and tear on your body too. So I'm going to fill in kind of this whole side here. I will pull out a little bit of these shadows here shortly, but I want to make sure all these lines are connected, so then I can just drag and drop this color in. But before we do that, we need to come up here and we need to turn off reference. So if we tap layer 3 and turn this off, otherwise if we would drag and drop the color in here, it's going to fill in the entire head. So if we do that, and we've got the lines correctly connected, that will fill in everything. If you're filling in the whole head, it just means that either have reference on or there's some area that the lines aren't connected. Do a curve around here for the eyes, and a little bit more of a taper there at the end. All right. And now that I've got a few different colors filled in, we're going to do some adjustments here then to the shadow. So we'll come up here to the layers menu, hit N for blend mode, and then we're going to drop down the opacity of this just down to where it looks natural. So I think 50% looks pretty good in this case. You want to make sure it looks good on all the colors. Now, if you are using a purple like this and it might not look good on all the colors in your design, it's really easy to fix if you just go ahead and make new layers for each different color. You can do that and then adjust the opacity separate with those. All right, back to our brush here. Let's continue on with the flow of the shadows. Pulling these down and around. You'll see with a lot of these shadows too, I'm going to go back to my eraser here. I like to do some tapers the way that the shadows line up. So you see it thins out here, gets wider at the bottom, and then comes back up, and then I can do another tapered in here. So the shadows really kind of follow the same principle and the same technique that I use on the lines, and it gives it just a really nice finished, polished look. Drag and drop, and you see that obviously I had somewhere that wasn't filled in and connecting there. So if I try to connect these some more, drag and drop, now it fills in. So pull them back out, see what we're left with. Now I'm going to hold down my eraser. This makes sure that the eraser is set for the same brush that you're using to draw with. And then I'm just going to pull back a little bit on these edges. What I find is if you fill in too much like this with a shadow, it's kind of hard to tell that it's shaded in just because there is so much of that solid color. You don't have any color next to it to contrast against it. So it kind of gets lost a little bit. So if you pull that back out like this, it will really help. I'm going to pull this one down further because it's kind of running into that other one. And you lose some of that taper there. I can pull it back in this way. Do the same thing here on this edge, just kind of do a rim light on the sides here and then down there. So once again, you can see we've got those two colors butted up against each other, so it's easier to tell that, okay, yeah, that does have a shadow in there. Continue to pull these around. Shadow in here. And down here on the bottom. Pull a little bit of a shadow here too, coming down underneath here and then back up into that crease of the mouth. Maybe a little shadow there. Then erasing just any extra bits that you might catch up on there. All right, I'm going to make this brush a little bit bigger now. I'm going to start to pull in some curves around here. I am going to tap my brush again and turn that streamline back on. Now that we're doing some curves to kind of match up with these, I want that turned back on to kind of help give those nice curves around these lines. I'm erasing just to fix any parts there. You don't have to do it in one fell swoop. You could if you wanted to do the brush super big, or else you can do it like this and kind of do a top and bottom area and then fill them in as you go around. You'll see there with that one, I didn't want to touch those two shadows together, so it kind of tapers down and then pulls back out. It's another technique that I use to break things up a little bit. And once again, I think it just looks a little bit more polished and nicer going that way. Pull in tighter here so we can see. Pull one down and around. Maybe pull this one down and have that taper down in. Once again, kind of following that line there and then this line here. I think that looks good. Over here, we'll do the same technique. And drag and drop that in since we've got a pretty big area filled in there. With these, I'm going to do this one a little bit different. I'm going to pull the shadows here on this back side of these lines. And I'm going to drop the size back down here. Once again, just following the flow of those lines. Pulling back out. I think here we'll probably have a little bit bigger of a shadow because of this hair coming here. Kind of pull that around. where that head sits there too. Back out so we can see. And I think, once again, because of that head, we'll pull another one down here. All right, and then pull them back out so we can kind of see overall what we're left with. I think that looks pretty good. I do need to get in here though, and I want to get a shadow underneath the eyebrow here. Making sure I got everything connected, and then I can just drag and drop there, and then that tapered curved line around too for the inside part of the eye. And pulling around some on the iris here. Maybe take that one back a little bit. Do the same thing over here on this one. Maybe even do a couple of dots inside here. All right. I think that looks good. So shadows are pretty much done. Let's go ahead and move on to the highlights now. Same technique here. Up to the layers panel, new layer. Setting this is clipping mask, and then going up here to the color palette again and choosing white. And then I like to come in and do this a little bit more sparingly than the shadows. Oops, the white did not get selected. All right, so we'll pull highlight here. Once again, that light source coming in from this top left. Drag and drop. And this is also where I like to do some ovals, some just kind of blown out shine. Some of these areas. And then from here, what we can do is tap on our layers menu, and for blend mode, and drop the opacity of this down, maybe about 40% or so. Looks pretty good. And then just kind of hit, oops. I'm going to go back to my shadows layer here and pull that shadow back a little bit. Back to my highlights layer. Just kind of start to pull some highlights here around. Again, just following the way that those initial ink lines flow. Just curving that in. What I'm doing here is making sure that the shadow and the highlights don't connect, so you need to make sure that there is a break between those. If you get a little bit close on those, do an oval one here. Pull one around the top of the curve there for the mouth. And yeah, I think it looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and maybe get one last one in here. Maybe do like a funky shape in here. Just one of those nice blown out highlights there. And yeah, I think that looks good. There we go. How to draw a moose for the letter M. Thanks so much for watching and bearing with me. I know it's been a while since the last video in the letter series, but these are going to go fast and furious here in the next few weeks. So there's going to be a lot of videos very, very quickly. So definitely make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell notification button so you can get alerted when I post these new videos. And if you do follow along with any of these, if you make a design based on the tutorials, definitely share it online. I love to see what you guys come up with. So if you're on any of the social medias, Instagram or X, Twitter, threads. Definitely tag me at BJDell so I can check them out, because I love seeing what you guys do by following along. I can be found online, bjdell.com. And of course, like I said, on all socials at BJDell. So that's it for today. I'll be back very, very soon. No huge gap between this video and the next one. So until then, as always, keep creating.